Okay, thank you for coming to today's session. So today's session is all about how to support your child with their pastoral needs at home. From the beginning of this year, we've already had how to support your child in the core subjects of reading, writing and maths. We are just waiting for the links to be what's the word, changed into a YouTube file, and as soon as that's done, I'll be able to send that over with the resources as well. So that will be done by the end of tomorrow, and I'll also add this link in as well, and the resources for that. So the aims of this session is twofold. So we're going to talk about emotion coaching, which is an approach that we use at school, and we're going to be using some of the scripts to support our pupils and thinking about what that looks like. And then the second part of the session is going to be looking at additional pastoral support that we have at school, some of the resources and the strategies that we use to support our pupils with their pastoral needs as well. I know Tanya and Dora, we just got you here today. Oh, I've got someone else coming in. But if you could just put in the chat or shout out, morning Maggie, what you'd like from today's webinar, hopefully then I can make sure that I kind of focus on that area if it's not part of the slide. So I'll just give you a minute to either put it in the chat or just to unmute yourself and say what you would like from today's session. Okay, I'm just going to carry on because I know you probably haven't had a chance to do that yet. I'm sure you're juggling this morning, but if you do have anything to say, please do let me know. So we're just going to have a look at emotion coaching first. We're going to look at the theory of emotion coaching and the scripts that we can use. And this is an approach that we started using at Groveland's. It's an approach that I used at my old school, and that I've trained the staff to use as well. And I also did some training for the children's centre, so Spurgeon's next door, on emotion coaching yesterday, funnily enough. So it's something that is being used, wanting to be used as a pastoral strategy across different settings, which is really, really good. Thank you, Tanya. I'll definitely make sure that I kind of look at different pastoral help and talk about that, and talk about what that looks like in different year groups as well. So I will kind of fast forward a little bit on some of the theory. So if I kind of go through the slides quite quickly, it might just be because we've got so much to get through and I want to kind of focus on the scripts, the strategies, and also the other pastoral interventions that we've got. But I just wanted to show you a video because this is something that I've shown the staff that I think is really important for us to kind of consider. So I'm going to just show you this. I hope that you can hear it, but if not, don't worry, I can include the link in the email that I send out. Sorry, my internet is being super slow today. Okay, I'm just going to go out and see if it works another while. Sorry, thank you for your patience. It's having a bit of a slow day on my internet today. I'm just going to try it one last time, and if not, I'm going to give up. hopefully in a minute this will start loading up. If not, I'm gonna just give up on it and then just send you the link and talk about what it means.
Probably think you know me. I'm the loud one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't listen. One with the short attention span. One at the back who never makes a contribution. One with no boundaries. One with no friends. One who's too helpful. One who flies off the handle. One who is always showing off. One who can't help lying. One with the temper. One with the issues. Only if you feel angry because stupid. But you don't know me at all. That's just what you see on the outside. That's not me. I'm inside. I'm beyond secret things. Because inside.
Okay, so hopefully got to hear what that boy was saying, but if not, I will talk about what he was saying. So in the video, he was talking about labels and the fact that he was labelled as being naughty, which is not a term that we use at our school, being like doing the wrong thing. And what he was saying is that they're the things that you see on the outside, but on the inside, I'm hurting. And that's something we talk about a lot at our school when we're talking about pastoral development. We talk about those kind of acting out behaviours, but we're also very mindful of those acting in behaviours. And what I mean by that is those children that are usually quite lively, that have now kind of reverted to being a bit insular, not being as sociable as they usually were, maybe not having the same group of friends anymore, or changing their group of friends. So basically a change in behaviour, whether that's acting in or acting out. And that's really, really important for us all to consider. I'm just going to show you this, and hopefully my computer will stop playing up. But if not, I will just go through each of the slides like this. So when we think about behaviours, whether it's acting in or acting out, we think about the Iceberg Model. And what I mean by that, you may have seen this before, especially if you've been to this session before, that the behaviours on top are pretty much like an iceberg. So what you can see, how the child's presenting themselves. But what emotion coaching does is it kind of feeds into both of these layers, what you can see, but also delves into the deeper layer of why is that person acting in the way that they're acting. And that's the great thing about emotion coaching, is that we're not just sanctioning children, and we wouldn't do that anyway, but sanctioning children because we've seen that they've done a behaviour that is inappropriate or not following a behaviour policy or a class charter. But we're looking and recognising that behaviour, and we're saying, I'm listening to you, what's going on here? So I want you to kind of think of now some behaviours at home that indicate that your child is struggling to manage everyday challenges, either at school, at home, or both. They may not be. You may just be here out of curiosity, and your child is actually able to, regulate and all of those. But is there any behaviours that indicate that they're struggling? Can you name those behaviours? And I don't mean putting a label on something, because that's something we don't want to do, but kind of name whether that is an emotion, whether that's anger, frustration, whatever that might be. And which appear to be the most significant behaviours affecting your child's ability to manage at school and at home. And sometimes we won't see those behaviours at school, but we are very aware that children can be very different in different settings. So it's really important that if you haven't shared how your child is behaving at home, because at school they're behaving in a very different way, but at home you're seeing their behaviour maybe a little bit erratic, they're not able to regulate, their emotions are either kind of very placid or angry or frustrated, please do let us know, because that's super important for us to help you with those kind of, not saying that we know those strategies, but also have that shared conversation with that child about expectations that we have at school and the same at home as well. And we usually find that when we kind of develop that relationship with both home and school, those behaviours do improve because we have that shared understanding as well. So I'm going to move on to emotion coaching now, if it lets me, and try again. Perfect. Okay. So the reason that we use emotion coaching is Gottman, who is a researcher, looked at this strategy that we are using, and he's got an institute. So if you've got any further interest in emotion coaching, you can Google Gottman and Gottman's Institute, and it kind of has more information on it. But he said children who do have emotion coaching achieve more academically in school. There are fewer behaviour problems. There are fewer infectious illnesses. And what he means by that is that because the child is emotionally stable, they are able to kind of fight off those physical and mental health issues that they may have had if they haven't been exposed to this strategy. They're emotionally stable and they become more resilient as well. And the great thing about emotion coaching, even though we're focusing on children today, is that emotion coaching is an approach that is used with everyone, whether that be colleagues, whether that be other people that you work with, if you work with parents and carers. It's basically used with absolutely everyone. We're focusing on children today, but please do use this approach in lots of different areas of your life. So what we're going to quickly look at, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it is very sciencey, and I want to make sure, because we've only got an hour, that we're getting through all the other parts as well. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the science behind emotion coaching. And you've probably seen this lots and lots of times before when we're talking about the hemispheres of the brain, left and right, and people usually use that phrase or question of, are you a left hemisphere person or right hemisphere person? But actually, what we want everyone in the whole world to be is a bit of both, and to have that balance between the left and the right. You can see on the right that it's very creative. It uses that emotional intelligence, expression, creativity. But the left is more reasoning, logical, analytical thinking. And we do need both to be working in unison. And that's really, really important. When we're thinking about the brain, we think about healthy child development, and we call that the triune brain. And that basically talks about 3 parts of the brain that are working together in balance, so that we've got that really nice homeostasis, and that child is emotionally stable and able to regulate their emotions. And we do this using a hand model. So if we think about our hand here, we have the brain stem in this section here. We have the limbic system, which are our emotions, and they're representing the thumb here. And then we have the cortex, or sometimes it's called the neocortex, at the top here, which kind of hugs everything and keeps everything together, working in harmony. And we use that we use the hand model to explain the healthy child development. So everything is working in unison together. So the brain stem is kind of the fight, flight, freeze, the survival response, what we do when we're kind of stressed. And we talk about stress in different ways. We can have healthy stress, so an exam, a challenge, a marathon, whatever that might be. But we also have unhealthy stress, which is prolonged stress or a mental health illness. And obviously that is not good for our bodies physically or mentally. And our bodies are constantly in that survival instinct. But what our bodies tend to do if we're mentally healthy, is they get into the fight, flight, freeze moment of time, but then something happens positively, where our parasympathetic system kicks in and it slows everything right back down, and then we're right back down to our normal. For some people, especially those with mental health issues, they are constantly in that fight, flight, freeze, and they cannot find a way out. They cannot trigger their parasympathetic system, or it takes a really long time for them to do that. So what we want to do as professionals, as parents, carers, is trigger that parasympathetic system and support our children with finding a way to calm themselves down. And we do that through co-regulation, which means helping our child and telling them what we think they need. So, for example, I think you're tired, we need to go to bed. It looks like you're thirsty, I think you need some food. So we're co-regulating because we're telling them what we think they need. However, as the children grow older, what we want to be doing is we want to be supporting them with self-regulation, which means they understand what they need, just as you do as adults. I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I need to rest, I'm not feeling very well, I need to scream into a pillow. You kind of know those things because you self-regulate. And you've learned that over time. So what we want to do with emotional regulation is start off with the co-regulation, but then over time that becomes self-regulation because the child understands what they're feeling, what their emotions are, and what they need to do about it. And that will be very different for each child. So their toolkit, what they use when they're angry, frustrated, happy, sad, is going to be very different to their siblings. It's going to be very different to you. It might be the same, but it's important for them to know that as well, that it's not strange that they've chosen something different to someone else, because we all have different personalities. We all have different things that work. And in a child, especially a toddler, the things that haven't developed yet are the neocortex, and that's developing over time because of brain development and also experiences. Toddlers are experiencing life for the first time, so they're seeing, how do I react to things, how do I rationalize? And that's why we always talk about the kind of terrible twos, how toddlers are behaving, because all the time their brainstem and their limbic system are always working, but they can't seem to use their neocortex, their kind of reasoning side of the brain, to help calm everything down. And we have to do that for them. And babies and toddlers, as you know, can go very quickly into this, and you are constantly having to co-regulate that. What's really interesting, or I found interesting from trauma-informed schools training that we had last year, is that they said that research shows that traumatized children, so those children that have gone through ACEs, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, experience the same overactivation in their amygdala. So that's kind of the driving seat and the brain's alarm system that's going on as soldiers returning back from war. And that is, for me, was the most shocking thing, that the kind of the traumatized children experience exactly the same thing as soldiers that have returned back from war. So their amygdala is always in overdrive. They can't get the neocortex to work in a way that someone who is probably more mentally, emotionally stable could do. So I kind of talked about the brain in the palm of our hand, and what we talk about is, we would never use this phrase obviously in school, but just to kind of use it as a metaphor, we talk about flipping the lid. And what we mean by that is that someone is become emotionally dysregulated and something's happened, and now they're very emotional, they're in their survival instincts of fight, flight or freeze, and they can't reason. And then what happens is, once they are able to use their parasympathetic system and use something that works for them in their toolkit, then slowly we get back to that emotionally stable response there. So I kind of want you to have a little think about an incident when your child flipped their lid, in inverted commas, and was unable to use parts of their triune brain. I'm sure there's many examples. I know with 2 boys myself, there have been many examples of that, still are many examples. And I want you to think about that in terms of the hand metaphor, and also think about it in terms of what did help them, what was in their toolkit, whether it was co-regulation and you noticed that and you said, I think you need this. And what was their response to that as well. And you can just have a little think yourself. You can share it with the group if you'd like to, put it in the chat. But I'll just give you about 30 seconds to just have a little think yourself. Okay, perfect. And I'm talking a little bit about your children and how they feel, but obviously we have all been in a situation where the reasoning, we're in a place where we're in fight, flight or freeze, and our reasoning is lost somewhat, and then we have to kind of use something to help us. That's a natural response. But what we want to happen over time is that when we get into our fight, flight, freeze, is to become a quicker reaction. And it also to be sparser throughout the day, throughout the week as well. If we're doing this constantly, that is exhausting. So it is about it being healthy, children understanding that is healthy, but also finding a solution that works for them. And we talk about the hand model in terms of our downstairs feelings, so our brainstem, our limbic system, and our upstairs feelings. And we talk about our upstairs brain helping our downstairs brain and hugging those feelings as well. So when we had the trauma-informed and mentally healthy schools training, they talked about 4 things. And the reason that I'm coming back to this is because it links really well with emotion coaching. And what I find is that lots of different pastoral kind of support or networks seem to be saying the same thing, but it's just got a different label. But I just wanted to show you the link because we do use a lot of trauma-informed school resources and strategies in our school as well. So they talk about 4 main areas. They talk about affect attunement, empathy, containment, and soothing, the emotional regulation. And emotion coaching fits very closely with these as well. I'm not going to read all of this, but just so that you get an idea of what affect attunement is. So affect attunement is about meeting someone in their space, meeting them and riding the same emotional wave that they are riding as well. And saying to them that I hear you, I see you, I'm holding this space for you. Empathy is exactly that. It is you validating that the emotion that that person is feeling is real, is valid as well, and you're helping the child make sense of their feelings, and you're making them understand that what they are feeling isn't wrong as well, even if you do not feel that. And that's sometimes difficult for people to understand. It's like, but why did they react like that? And just because we do not react in the same way, sometimes that empathy can be lost. But it's really important that even if we do not understand why our child might be crying, our child might be angry, that we are showing them that empathy and we are going to them and we've got that affect attunement, we're riding that same emotional wave. And what I mean by that is that we don't start crying with them, but that we're meeting them and saying, I'm here for you, I'm holding this space for you as well. Containment is once you've kind of met them in the middle, talk to them, empathize with them. If they have engaged in behavior which is dangerous to themselves or others, it's about setting those limits now. And that's what we mean by containment. It's about putting those boundaries in place. I know that you were angry that we couldn't play another game tonight and that we had to go to bed, but you cannot hit mummy or whatever it might be. So it's making sure that you are setting those limits for that child and saying, I'm hearing you. I understand why you felt that way. However, these are the boundaries. These are our limits. And that's really important to set that. There may not ever be a situation where a child does something which has consequences, which are dangerous to themselves or others. So you may not have to use the containment, but that is there as the kind of third step in that process as well. And it's done in a non-punitive way, so you're not punishing the child, it's being really factual. And that's what I would say to everyone, is when you're talking about containment, do not be personal and depersonalize it. It is literally being factual. I know you feel this way, however, we cannot do that because it is dangerous to me. You are hurting me, you are going to hurt yourself, you are going to hurt your siblings. So just making it super, super clear and not letting labels come into that. And then the last thing is that soothing regulation. And like I said at the very beginning, you are going to have to co-regulate because your child will not be able to know, and they may be, but they may not be able to know what strategies help them. So you will have to say to them, I think you're feeling this. Am I right? Okay, I think you should have this. If they say no, then another strategy. And over time, hopefully they will then be able to problem solve themselves and also regulate themselves as well. So we talked about the fight, flight, freeze stress response. And when we talk about that, we liken it to the gas pedal in a car. So when we're accelerating in the car, that is literally what it is like when our brainstem is going into that fight, flight, freeze response. And this is part of the sympathetic system in our body. So we have two systems in our bodies. We have the sympathetic system and we have the parasympathetic system. And I just wanted to show you this. So in my other world, when I have time to do it, I am a soft tissue therapist. And when I went to some training, which I did on stress and the impact of stress on our bodies, my tutor showed me this, and I just thought it was a really lovely diagram. I'm a visual learner. It's a really lovely diagram to show the impact of stress on our bodies. And this is for children, adults, whoever it might be. So you can see, like we talked about earlier, fight, flight, or freeze is a really natural, healthy response. We do it all the time. It happens all the time. It's part of our genetic code. But what happens is we find something to calm us down and then we return back to normal, like you can see at the top. At the bottom, it is not coping. So we have tried everything, but for some reason, something isn't working and it's leading to exhaustion. And then that can lead to illnesses, whether that be physical or mental health. So the parasympathetic nervous system is what we want to activate in everyone, yourself and your children, especially when they're dysregulated. So what we want to do is activate the parasympathetic nervous system and then hug those downstairs feelings that we just talked about before. The parasympathetic system is known as the rest and digest system, and it's exactly that. And like I was saying about the sympathetic system being the gas pedal, the accelerator in the car, the parasympathetic is more like the brake. It's slowing everything down. It's making everything calmer. And what we want to do, like I've got in that picture there, is we want to make sure that our sympathetic and our parasympathetic system is working in harmony together, that there is balance. And we talk about that when we're stimulating our vagal tone. And vagal tone is how well our fight, flight, freeze and vagus nerve are balanced and working together. And vagal tone is basically when we are calmed down and everything is working in harmony together. How is the vagal nerve activated? So it's activated by us self-soothing, us finding a strategy that works well for us. The interesting thing is the vagal nerve and tone it starts off as a genetic thing. However, experiences can shape that. So how did mummy and daddy act towards that? Okay, and they're internalizing that. How did grandma react towards that? How did auntie and uncle act towards that? How did my friends react towards that? So they're always building this picture of how family members act and react to things as well. So that's really important that we are thinking about how we're reacting to situations, because children are developing their own neocortex, their own reasoning skills based on their environment around them. I'm not going to show this, but this is a still face experiment. And basically the impact of this was to see how our kind of prosody, our facial expression, body language impacts our children. And it's quite a distressing thing to watch, actually. If you do watch, it's interesting, but it is quite upsetting as well. So the mother is told to kind of laugh, giggle, interact with her baby, and the baby responds in the same way. She's then asked to do the complete opposite, and you can see in the bottom picture she's very kind of passive in her expression. She's not acting in any way, and then the child just becomes distressed. So it's kind of an example of our environment and making sure that we are ensuring that our environment shows how we react to things. And also it's about that affect attunement as well, meeting that child in a place that they are at as well. So when we're thinking about our co-regulation toolkit, what we can do to help our children, there's lots of different ways, and not teaching you to suck eggs because I know that you know this, but it's finding something that works for your child. And their toolkit is going to be very different depending on what their emotion is. depending on the context as well. So if they're tired and lethargic, food and drink might help. If they are feeling quite distressed, deep pressure might help. And what we mean by deep pressure is, for some children, they need to know where they are in space. And that sounds a bit odd, but we call that proprioception. So knowing where you are in relation to things. So those children, you might have a child like this yourself, who are clumsy, bump into things, don't understand personal space. They don't have an understanding of themselves in space, and their proprioception is quite poor. They may also like that sensory feedback as well, and your child might be like that. So your child might be tactile, always wanting to kind of squeeze and hug, and so deep pressure activities will be really good for them. And there's an example there which a lot of OTs and physiotherapists use, which is your child lying on the floor on a mat and you gently rolling a ball across their back. It can be as simple as just squeezing on the arm, hugs, pushing against something, pulling against something. Fidget toys as well is really good. We use fidget toys a lot throughout our school as well for those children that feel anxiety or are going through something and they just need that physical thing to kind of squeeze. Deep breathing, mindfulness, we have headspace at school which we use for that. Trampolining, we also have that at school to help our children during sensory circuit time, which I'll talk about in a moment. Singing, movement, dance, using the climbing frame, using the playground, all of those are really important co-regulation toolkit, and it's not an exhaustive list. We could add lots and lots of things to that. Talking to a friend, talking to a trusted adult, that's really important. And one thing that came out of the trauma-informed schools training was having an emotionally available adult before the age of 18 will reduce the risk of a child having a mental health issue when they get older. So that is really important to us as a school, to make sure that each child in the school has at least one person that they can go to, a trusted adult, an emotionally available adult that they can talk to. And what we get our children to do is create a helping hand, which I'll talk about at the end of today's session. So we have different styles in dealing with emotions, and I'm going to quickly go through these. We have emotion dismissing, emotion disapproving, laissez-faire. But what we want to do is use the emotion coaching style, and I'm going to explain why. The disapproving style is exactly that. It disapproves any emotions and views them as negative. It tries to get rid of these emotions by punishment, belittling as well. It focuses on the behaviour rather than the cause of that. So going back to that iceberg model of the top of the iceberg rather than underneath. And it's kind of got this kind of notion of kind of toughening up the child, of weakness as well. Dismissing is exactly how that sounds as well. The person and the adult does have good intentions, but they may find conversations like this awkward. They may not have had a childhood where they were spoken to and they're in a kind of nurturing way, and therefore they don't know how to do this themselves. So it might be it's okay, or get better, or cheer up, those types of phrases. So trying to get rid of it. So not being punitive, not punishing or anything like that, but just trying to get rid of it, trying to use distraction techniques to get rid of this problem. But of course, this doesn't help the child, because then they think they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, that their emotions aren't valid. And the effects of both of those is exactly that. The child learns to think that what I'm feeling is not accurate. And sometimes we, as adults, we hear that all the time. As children, we hear that all the time. Like, do you think I was right in feeling like that? And asking that question is, you want that validation that, no, you're right in feeling that. And that's what emotion coaching does. The child then learns to not trust their own feelings because it's been dismissed or disapproved of, and they're not giving those opportunities to self-regulate or problem solve, because it's gone away. It is, I've got this emotion, now it's gone, either by a distraction technique if you're being dismissive, or by a sign of weakness, or how you're feeling is not right. So they're not having an opportunity to get to those next stages that we talked about with containment and self-soothing as well. And all of those styles can lead to relationships being, relationships not being fostered in the way that we want them to be. And that child then doesn't trust the relationship that they have with that particular adult because they think they're not being heard. A laissez-faire or permissive style is very laid back. It does have high empathy, but has low guidance at the same time as well. So it isn't giving much guidance, isn't giving much of anything. So that child is neither here or there and doesn't really understand if their emotions are right or not right. So if we're thinking about all of these styles, disapproving has low empathy and high guidance. Dismissive has low empathy and low guidance. Laissez-faire has high empathy and low guidance. But what we want is high empathy, high guidance to make our children emotionally stable as they get older into their adulthood. And that's what emotion coaching does. So we're going to go on to this now. So emotion coaching has 3 steps. The first one is recognizing, empathizing, validating, and labeling the feelings. And what I mean by labeling the feelings is not giving it a name, but just saying that you're there, you're present, you hear them. The second one is setting limits on that behavior. So like I talked about with the trauma-informed schools, they called that containment. So setting those boundaries, setting those limits if that behavior is dangerous to themselves or others. And the third one is problem solving. And through problem solving, the child will self-soothe, they'll be able to self-regulate, and they'll be able to develop their own toolkit to support them when they feel that emotion again. I'm not going to show this video. I will put it into the email though. It's just a really lovely video which talks about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And basically what we want to do when we are using the emotion coaching technique is use empathy, not sympathy. And what I mean by that is that we are not comparing how that child feels with an experience about it. They don't really want to hear it at this particular time. What they want to do is to be able to say what they want to say, and for you to say, I hear you, I understand you're feeling like this. I would feel like that if I was in the same situation as well. If you do feel like that, there may be situations that you do not agree with how they've reacted to it, but you would never say that to them, because then that devalues the emotion that they're feeling as well. So step 1, we say connect with the child before correcting what they've done. So that is genuinely empathizing with the child from their point of view, even if you do not agree with it. And like I said, you do not have to say you agree with it. You can just be really factual and observe what you see. I can see that you're angry about X, Y, and Z. I can see that's upset you. We recognise that all emotions are natural and healthy, and we talk about that a lot at Groveland's. We don't use the phrases positive and negative, and we've talked about that. There's been lots of staff training on that since I joined last September about labelling emotions. So we don't have positive or negative emotions. All emotions that we have are healthy, normal emotions. However, it's what we do with those emotions that we need to work on. So if we are angry, are we going to punch our fist into a wall, or are we going to find another strategy that is going to help us in a way that isn't a danger to ourselves and others? Whether that be screaming into a pillow, whether that be using a punch bag, which one of our children do use in school, whether that be colouring because that calms us down, going for a walk, whatever that might be, but finding something that isn't dangerous to yourself or others. And that's the important thing. It is healthy to be angry, and we say that to our children all the time. And it is healthy for them to see all adults feeling a certain way as well. So what I do always say to parents, carers, is when you're doing a feelings chart at home, is to make sure that your names are on that feelings chart as well. That you are showing that child, obviously in a professional way, that you are showing your child that you get angry or you get sad or you get tired, because they need to learn that as well, and they need to see how you deal with it. If mummy's upset, what has she just done to help her trigger her parasympathetic system to now be better, feel better in herself? So it's important to show your child that. You are recognizing behavior as communication. So if you see your child doing something, acting in a way, you are looking at that and not telling them off and being punitive and saying you shouldn't do that, but kind of seeing that as a sign of what's going on. There's something underneath here. And this is an example of kind of connecting and recognizing, validating, labeling that emotion, that first step, rather than denying the feeling. So this girl is with what I appear is her dad, and her turtle has died. And the left-hand side of it is is showing how he is denying her feeling, whereas the right-hand side is showing how he is more accepting of that and is recognizing, validating, labeling that. So she says, my turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. Now, don't get so upset, honey. Don't cry. It's only a turtle. And then she starts to cry. Stop that. I'll buy you another turtle. I don't want another one. Now you're being unreasonable. So you can see that there's a disconnect between both the father and her daughter. And what we want to do here is do the exact opposite, and we want to connect. We want both of them to be on the same page. And at the moment, they're not. And the father is kind of disregarding how that child feels, and also kind of making it you know, very monetary, whereas this is a turtle that she loves, and he's very much, I'll buy you another one. So really disregarding the relationship that they had together. Whereas the emotion coaching response of recognizing, validating, labeling the emotion would be, my turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. Oh no, that's a shock. He was my friend. To lose a friend can hurt. I taught him to do tricks. You two did have fun together. I fed him every day. You really cared about that turtle. So it might not be the phrases that you would use, but the point is that they're connecting with each other, and you can already see that because it's almost like they're mirroring each other's phrases as well. So it's about being on the same page, even if you do not agree with how your child is reacting. Just make sure you're connecting with them. And the importance of emotion coaching over time is it develops an internal regulation. And what we mean by that is over time, the child will be able to self-regulate and know, I'm feeling this way. This is what I've got to do for myself. So just to recap, the first phase, we recognize the emotion, we empathize, we validate, so we let them know that that emotion is okay, and we label. Like I said before, we don't give it a name. What we mean by labeling is just connecting with that person, sharing the emotion, riding that emotional wave with them. And I've got a couple of examples of scripts here, and I will add these to the slides, to the resources that I hand out as well, just so that you can adapt these for your own use at home. I can see that you're really angry because you had to stop doing your favourite activity. Your face is red and you're breathing really fast. I'd be frustrated and annoyed too if I had to interrupt doing something that I really enjoyed and was in the middle of doing. So you can see that it's really factual. Your face is red, you're breathing really fast. And the reason that this person has said that is because it will be helpful for that person to know what they look like, how they feel, especially if they don't have a good understanding of their emotions when they are in that moment as well. And it is not to degrade that person, but it's just observational. And everything there is very observational, but it's empathic. I'd be frustrated and annoyed too. So connecting with that person. Now, if you disagree with their emotion, you do not need to say that, and you just need to be factual with what you can see. I can see that you get angry when that happens. I would feel angry if that happened to me. It's normal to feel like that. So normalizing all of these is really, really important. You're basically saying to the child that what you're feeling is valid, and that's what they need to hear. I noticed that you were looking around at the other children who were working on their projects. I think you might be feeling nervous right now about whether your work will be okay. Have I got that right? And again, I've put that example in there as well, and this is taken from Rose in 2014, who's got a really good book if you want to kind of purchase it after today's session, is not making that assumption that this is how a person's feeling. And if you're not sure, If it's a new relationship that you've got with someone, then you may want to say to them, have I got that right? And check in with them. And it's also a really good way to start and initiate that conversation with your child as well. So we've already recognised, validated, labelled and empathised, and now we're in step 2, which is setting those limits. And that's really important because we've validated the emotion, we've labelled the feeling, we've recognised how that child is feeling, but we have to communicate to them that certain behaviours are not accepted and cannot be accepted. Now, they may not have done anything which is dangerous to themselves or others, so you may not need to use this step. But if you do get to a point where they have done something which is harmful to themselves and others, you do need to set those boundaries and set those limits. And this is an example. You are angry that I've taken away your phone, but these are the rules everyone has to follow. I will keep it safe for you. So again, being really factual. These are the rules that we have to follow. Behaving in that way that you have is not okay. We can't behave like that even though you are feeling annoyed because it is not safe. So-and-so has expressed that they are upset with you because of your actions. It is important that you apologise to them to show that you are sorry for what you have done. You will have to spend 5 minutes in a break to reflect on your behaviour. This is not a safe place to be angry. Let's go to a safe place and then we can talk. And as you can see from the examples that I've included here, they're not lengthy. They don't go on and on and on and on. They're also not personal as well. They're very factual. Behaving in that way is not okay. This is not a safe place for you to be doing X, Y, and Z. We need to move to. So it's not personal, and it's important not to be personal. I know in the heat of the moment it might happen, but just making sure that everything is depersonalized in the setting limits and the boundaries. And then the third step is problem solving with that child. And like I've said lots of times today, that will start with co-regulation, so telling the child what you think that they need, and then hopefully over time they will be able to self-regulate as well. And this is where the parasympathetic system will kick in, and those upstairs feelings will hug those downstairs feelings, and the reasoning will come in. Now, like I've said to staff when I did this earlier in the year, and like I said to the Children's Centre staff yesterday, it's not, as we know in life, nothing is clear as in step 1, step 2, step 3. We might need to go back. So you might have set your limits and your boundaries, and that's triggered something else, and then we're back to step 1. And what you do again is you go through step 1 again and go back to step 2. So you might have to keep going backwards and forwards. But what's really important is that you don't do step 1, miss out step 2 and go to step 3. You would only miss out step 2, the boundaries and the setting those limits, if that child has not done something which is dangerous to themselves or others. But it is important that you follow step 1, 2 and 3. And step 3 examples are next time you're feeling like this, what could you do? How do you think you will react next time if this happens again? Now, I would only kind of put that question forward to someone who is developing their understanding of regulation. I wouldn't put that forward to a child who is in early years, perhaps, or a child whose emotional literacy is quite poor. I would actually say, I think that you need X, Y, and Z, and you put that to them. Would you like to do that with me? You have the option to work in a group with so-and-so or work with me, which you want to do. And I've put that example in there as well, because you can give children choices sometimes, especially if they're a bit confused, especially if they're really adamant that they want to do one thing, which is completely against what you said, and what you've discussed, is that your child wants to do this and you're like, no, you can do this or you can do this, and being super clear. Tomorrow we can read a longer story if we come up to 10 minutes earlier. So again, what you're saying is, for this particular incident, this was my child who wanted to read another story, and saying to them, absolutely fine, we will do that tomorrow. I've heard you, I'm listening to you, I know that you're upset. However, tomorrow what we can do is we finish your program 10 minutes earlier. That means we've got time for 2 stories instead of 1. So you're making it really clear what those expectations are. So that is emotion coaching, and I just want to talk a little bit about additional pastoral resources and strategies that we use in school as well. And I know, Tanya, you put that in the chat as well, so hopefully this answers your question. At the very beginning of lockdown, I sent home a visual timetable for people to use at home. I will resend that again. And the importance of this is for some children, even at home, even during weekends, they find the unstructured element of the day really, really challenging, and they need that routine and structure. And a visual timetable will really help with that, and will really help with the anxiety being kind of lowered. So you will have a copy of this, and what you can do is got all different activities. I've tried to include everything that might happen at home, is that you can do this with your child at the beginning of the day. And what we tend to do at school is we have one on at the front of the classroom. Some children have their own individual visual timetables that they have on their desks as well, because that supports them. And what happens is throughout the day, the children will then take off the things that they've done. And that's really important. And that's been advised from the National Autistic Society, but actually that is good for everyone and it's good practice. So the child knows, okay, these things have happened, I've got this left to do. So if your child finds routine and structure really helpful, then please do use a visual timetable at home. I would suggest laminating it and putting some Velcro on it or some blue tack. And having a strip of Velcro on your fridge or on a wall, and then you can quickly do it every day, and it's not a fuss. And you will find that your children will want to take ownership and have responsibility of it, so it's not an extra job for you. And you'll find over time that it will reduce those stress levels. If your child wants snacks 100 times a day, like my youngest son, then you can put in, these are the snack times, these are when we're having snacks. And make that really, really clear. If bedtime is tricky, then you can concentrate on just doing a bedtime visual timetable of what that will look like. And if you need any bespoke ones, please do contact me at school and we can create those together. So it might be that bedtime is quite tricky and that we create one for brushing our teeth, washing our face, whatever your bedtime routine is, reading a book, and getting to bed. So you can do it in lots of different ways. But if you do want a bespoke one, please let me know and I will work with you to do that. We also at school use an incredible 5-point scale alongside our zones of regulation programme. And it's a really lovely, universal way, all the way from EYFS, all the way up to year 6, where the children can say, I'm feeling this number. And I did send this out in February when I did the first pastoral training session, but I will resend it again. So again, you can have this out, they can put their name on it or they can just point to it, whatever helps them. And you can use this as part of your emotion coaching. I think you're feeling a number 2. Am I right in thinking that? And then unpicking that with them as well. When I sent the incredible 5-point scale to parents, this is the version that I sent. And the reason I sent this is because it's a really lovely version from Twinkle. And it actually has on the right-hand side the toolkit. So the last kind of problem-solving element of emotion coaching, of what can you try to do to stimulate your parasympathetic system and calm yourself down. So I will attach that again for you to use at home. And, you know, if you want to create one with each of your children, I would absolutely suggest that. Something else that we use throughout the school is sensory snacks. And sensory snacks are things that are used within the classroom when a child or the children are losing focus and attention. And you may have heard the phrase brain gym, which was used about 10 years ago. It's basically the new brain gym. So it's lots of different exercises that the child can do from their seat, even when they're working, and can use throughout the day. And again, I will reattach these to the email as well. They were sent last year, but just in case we've got new parents as well, I will reattach those. Some really simple things to do: finger presses, pressing our hands together. Some children really like that, especially if they like that sensory feedback. So squeezing your hands together, rubbing your hands together, chair push-ups, a thinking cap, which is your ears, so rolling your ears forwards, backwards, Hook-ups, as you can see. Space buttons is putting your finger on the back of your back, so just before your coccyx, and then on your above your lip, and then just gently stimulating it, and you're stimulating some of the acupoints in your body for focus and concentration. And the energetic yawn is literally just doing a huge big yawn and just in, out, and doing that repeatedly as well. There are a few others, but I will attach them to the resources. And for some children, they find that they need something bigger than those sensory snacks, that they need to go for a walk, that they need to do a bigger activity. So we have lots of sensory circuits that go on all the way from early years all the way to year 6. And they're called circuits because it is 2 or 3 different activities in a circuit that children will do repeatedly for about 5-10 minutes, and then they will go back to the classroom. And if your child does have sensory circuits in their plan or provision, you will know about that because the teacher will have communicated that to you, or it will be written in their pupil passport or IEP if they're on the SEND register. So you can do the same thing at home. You could plan in when your child is doing sensory circuit time, and I have got a tab for that in your visual timetable. So if you know that your child gets a bit sleepy in the middle of the morning, gets a bit restless, you could plan in a sensory circuit time there, whether it is 2 bounces on the trampoline, 2 swings, and then hanging from the climbing frame. So whatever you might want to do, and you can make it whatever you want. You can draw a hopscotch and do the hopscotch and then the trampoline or the swing or a bouncy ball, or play with water or sand, whatever helps your child. We do also have Therabands, which you can see at the bottom left there. And I've purchased Therabands for some children that find sitting on chairs super difficult. So the Theraband is one that is all connected in a loop, so not like the one that's in the picture. We put that at the bottom of the chair, and then the child can actually move their feet either side of it as well, so they're getting that sensory feedback. We also have Wobble Cushions, so seating wedges for children that find sitting really difficult. Sometimes they're called Wobble Cushions as well. It's a seating wedge or Wobble Cushions. If your child finds sitting down very difficult and they're fidgeting all the time, you can purchase that, and I will put the link for that in the resources as well. Another strategy that we use is called I Wish My Teacher Knew. And what was really lovely the first time that I did this is I think the parents here actually, yes she is, Hada's mum is Hada's mum said that that's a really lovely idea. I'm going to change that to I wish my mummy knew, which I thought was really lovely. So the premise behind this is basically the children write down something that is worrying them, bothering them, and then they put this into a box, and then the teacher and the teaching assistant goes up to the child and talks to them using that emotion coaching response. Now, this is differentiated further down the school, which is a question you had, Tanya, about what pastoral support looks like throughout the school, is differentiated down the school because they may not have that writing kind of stamina or those skills at that point yet. So they would do that through a feelings chart and through discussions, PSHE lessons, circle time sessions, and talking and checking in with the teacher. We also do something called the helping hand at school. So this is a strategy that we got from, I think it was Anna Freud that I got it from. But what that each child does in the school is draw around their hand, and then they have a PSHE lesson surrounding it and talk about 5 people in their life inside of school and outside of school that they trust, that are their emotionally available people. And the reason that we do this is when our children are in a place where they need a bit of support, we can then go to their helping hand and see who do they trust, who do they want to talk to, and that's really important. We also do blob trees and body mapping, and blob trees, there's lots of blob trees out there. You don't need to buy a blob tree book, you can just Google it and you'll find lots on the internet. And a blob tree is a really lovely visual way for a child to say how they're feeling. So you can give them one version of a blob tree, and then you can look at it and say, which of these is it kind of represents how you're feeling at the moment? Which blob would you be? And then all of the blobs, if you look carefully, I know it's quite difficult on this screen to look at them, but they've all got different expressions, they're all doing different things, which represent different emotions. So they can point to that blob and then have a discussion about that. And that's really an important strategy to use, especially for those children that aren't writing yet, or have very little communication, or find talking about their feelings quite tricky. We also do something called body mapping, which is having a silhouette of a body, as you can see there, and talking about the child, talking to the child when they're angry, frustrated, happy, sad, what they notice in their body. And it's really important to use that phrase, which I got from my kind of soft tissue therapy world. What do you notice, as opposed to what do you feel? Because some children might not be able to feel anything. They may hear things, they may see colours, they may feel something, but we all notice things in different ways. So if you say, what do you notice in your body? That will bring up more than what do you feel, because they may not be able to feel it. And again, if they're finding that difficult, you can then use an example of your own to help them with noticing what's going on in their own body. And then very kind of, again, not patronizing, but just always kind of celebrating those achievements, even those small ones. And at school, for those children that have low self-esteem, we have a proud pad, which I've designed, which focuses on celebrating those positives in a child's life. No mention of anything that hasn't gone well, only positives. And we talk about that at home and at school, and it's a document that goes between home and school, and builds up this really lovely record of what the that child can do and what that child is capable of. So when they have a low day, we can say, no, look, this book shows all the amazing things you can do, and goes through all the amazing things that their teachers and their parents, carers have said about them. So we talked about emotion coaching. We talked about some of the strategies that we use at school for pastoral care and support. And I just wanted you, I know we haven't got that much time, but I just want you to kind of have a look at these scenarios and thinking about the emotion coaching approach, where in the first step we recognise, validate, empathise, label the emotion. The second one, setting limits, and the third one, problem solving. Choose one of these for yourself, and then have a little think about what you would do using that emotion coaching script to support these children. So I'm just going to give you a minute to do that, just so you can go through that process yourself. Okay, perfect. If anyone does want to share, please feel free to, but I'm not going to pressure anyone to share what they thought and what they said, but please do let me know if you do want to kind of share what your approach was based on these scenarios. So we talked about emotion coaching advantages. So it teaches young people about the world in motion in that moment. Their vagal tone is increased, so their parasympathetic system is working in harmony with their sympathetic system. The children's brains become more integrated. So we talked about the left and the right hemisphere working in harmony. And we're basically teaching our children to deal with ups and downs, and saying that that is also normal for everyone. We're accepting all emotions as normal and not labelling them as positive or negative. We're also enabling parents to create an ethos of positive learning behaviour as well, and giving them the confidence to de-escalate those challenging behaviours, because they've got a process to follow. It provides a value-added dimension to behaviour management strategies, because using our other techniques as well as our emotion coaching to support our child. And all the things that we said before about the child in particular, about them having fewer behavioural problems, fewer infectious illnesses, being more emotionally stable. I would question the more popular. I don't feel that that's necessary or a necessary comment, but I would change that to that they are emotionally stable, they are confident in themselves. So I kind of want you to just think of, as we're kind of wrapping up now, and I can't believe we're on time, that never happens with me, is what aspects of emotion coaching do you think that you already apply in everyday life, and how can you see that it will work in your life at home as well? I also want you to think about the kind of other strategies we've talked about, so sensory circuits, visual timetable, helping hand, I wish my teacher or my mummy knew, and sensory snacks and all those things that we've talked about, and think about what you're going to take away from today's webinar. From that, you might have a specific question that you want to ask me once I stop recording, which is absolutely fine, and we can talk about that. And if there's any further support or resources that you think you would need or would like to support your child with their specific pastoral needs. And like I said, you know, with the visual timetable, if you need support with one particular task, please do contact me and we can work through a timetable together. Another thing that I didn't mention that I just thought of now is some children find following instructions really overwhelming. So having a now and next board is really helpful for that, and I will attach that to the resources as well. So you have a board which has now at the top, next on the top. In the now section, you can draw a picture, whatever you're doing now, and a word underneath of what you're doing. So it might be now, it's dinner time. So you've got a plate, your knife, fork, and you write dinner. Next is getting ready for bed. So you might just draw pajamas and then write bedtime or getting ready for bed. And that really helps children who find instructions and following instructions really, really difficult. It's visual, you can put it there. It can also reduce those arguments because you can say, remember we agreed this? Look, I said we're going to have dinner and we're going to do bedtime. And so you can reduce it that way. So I will put a now and next board and attach that onto there as well. I have included references from all the places with regards to the emotion coaching, in case you are interested in looking at this a little bit further. And we are right on time because we've got 3 minutes to spare for any questions. If you do have any personal specific questions, once I've stopped recording, we can have a chat about those. But if you do have any general questions that you'd like to ask now, please do.